Osiris.
Hi, this is Lucas Nelson with Promise of the Real, and the podcast you're listening to is part of the Osiris Network. Osiris is creating a community that connects people like you with podcasts and live experiences about artists and topics you love. We'll be doing many live events this summer around the country, which will include artist interviews, contests, and more. Sign up for the newsletter at osirispod.com to stay in the loop.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into GuitarCast. This is Andy Keithley, and this is GuitarCast episode 30. Today we're going to talk with Connor Vance, who plays fiddle with the Dustbowl Revival, and is also a great guitar player too. This is me and him in the background playing Whiskey Before Breakfast. And he brought the fiddle too, and he's going to get that out a little later on in the episode. Thank you to everyone who's been leaving ratings and reviews. Here is a recent review, 5-star rating from Functified Ghost Dog. Congrats on the great podcast series, and the dog food is great too. So thanks, Functified Ghost Dog. Don't forget to visit osirispod.com. Stay in the loop with all the live events and other great podcasts in the Osiris Podcast Network. GuitarCast is brought to you by Zuri Food. Fresh, all-natural, all-human-grade dog food at zurifood.com. Here comes GuitarCast episode 30 with Connor Vance.
You know what I love? In klezmer music, they'll throw in those minor seconds. Mm-hmm. Those things are so tasty.
Yeah, I like put all my eggs in the bluegrass basket. So, you know, with major and with like dominant 7 stuff, I'm like good to go. But I really need to go back and learn some more like of the gypsy stuff and klezmer, and those scales are not under my hands at all. Like
they're weird.
They're very weird.
Yeah, remember I played a piece by an Armenian composer when I was doing classical violin at UCLA, and those scales are strange because they're different going up and coming down. They're very chromatic. Yeah. And there's a whole world of, you know, killing Armenian jazz and other styles that have a lot to offer that I haven't explored either.
Yeah. You mentioned UCLA, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about your time there, what you were studying.
So I went in as a classical violinist, and at my audition I played some Bach, some Vinyavsky, and then I finished with Sweet Georgia Brown and improvised around it. And the guy, Guillaume Sussre, the professor of violin, happened to be French, and he had played with Stéphane Grappelli a couple of times, and he was very impressed. He's
nice.
Like, oh, he must play very well because he plays like Stéphane Grappelli. I was like, yeah, sure. And they let me in. And then about a month later, he's like, oh, you do not have the intonation, you do not have the technique. They realized I was kind of a hack when it comes to classical, because I was always a hybrid instrumentalist. The first 2 years were very hard.
What age did you start with violin?
I started at 8 years old, and I played Celtic, bluegrass, mariachi, Hendrix, all kinds of stuff in addition to classical from the very start. Even before I started violin, I was listening to Hank Williams and Gene Autry and Bob Wills. My dad had a guitar hanging up. My brother and I would beat it and read Shel Silverstein. Do like our own version of beat poetry.
Cool.
Like the kangaroo jumped around.
Yeah.
That was our earliest intro to music. Yeah, where the sidewalk ends.
That's great. Man.
So like the first 2 years of UCLA were very difficult because I didn't know how to practice. I was gigging too much. They were trying to teach me these musical elements that I didn't have the technique to understand. So halfway through, they're like, okay, we're going to have to kick you out if you don't get better.
Really?
I found a grad student who was willing to help me. She gave me etudes. She knew how to achieve technically what the teachers were asking for. She's like, this is how you practice. This is what to practice. You can do it. She gave me encouragement.
Yeah.
Then I switched teachers halfway through, to a different professor. They gave me even more chord technique. The last 2 years were way better.
Cool.
I was only playing stuff I enjoyed playing, like fast Stravinsky, like Paganini, Mark O'Connor caprices, because they're quick, they're fast and flashy, and that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
I didn't need to sound romantic. I tried the Mendelssohn violin concerto and completely failed. For like months, it was just like a grind. So yeah, they definitely taught me sensitivity. It was really hard to even compete, because all my other peers were pure classical and they were developing really quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas I was this run that was just kind of like goofing off. But at the end,
you're playing. I mean, it's hard. You know, I'm not picking sides, but what I prefer to hear a fiddle play is more of the country and bluegrass stuff.
Word.
And Celtic. You know.
Yeah, and a lot of my peers have since learned how to play other styles. And some of them, when they play rock or pop stuff, they still sound a bit too classical.
Yeah.
But they understand the value. Do they need like stuff written out?
I've run into players who are like, oh, if you're just like calling chords and stuff, I don't know what to do. Like,
and it's so embarrassing because like you're a musician, you should be able to.
And that's what I'm thinking is like that's the first way I ever learned. You know, that was my foundation. So to meet somebody who could, you know, perfectly sight read and sight play an entire piece of music, and then you say, all right, we're going to do like a blues in A, and they're like, I'm not sure what to do.
Well, because at that point, you don't really need to sound like a violin. Like, yeah, you're playing a violin, but you're supposed to be imitating either a vocalist or what a guitar would do.
Yeah.
Like, so in the band, I play the violin, but...
The Dustbowl Revival.
Yeah, in Dustbowl Revival, there's a need for other rhythm instruments. Like, we don't have an organ player. We don't have... We have one acoustic, but we don't have an electric rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
And so...
I think I just want to say real quick, I think it's incredible and awesome that there's a band like Dustbowl Revival with 8 players, not a single electric guitar on stage. Most bands with 8 players have 4 electric guitars on stage.
It's good for our, our rider, for our transport.
Yeah.
But there was a need there, and we started playing more funk inspired stuff for New Orleans jazz inspired music. And all these tones I hear in my head, like I would hear an organ part, so I'd play it on the violin, but the violin tone is quite narrow. It also happens to be in the same range as the trumpet and the mandolin, all in that same
Both
band.
of which are in the Dust Bowl.
Yeah. So that's why I have this huge pedal board with me, like 13, 14 pedals on it, called the Compensator.
Yeah.
Features the ego boost and the blame shifter.
Yeah.
And the talent suck. And also on it is like a Pog and a Leslie sim. So going through the Pog and Leslie, it sounds freaking just like an organ.
Yeah.
People in the audience are like looking around. The sound guy's testing every channel, like, where the frig is that sound?
Yeah, and you also...
And it works. It gets it across. It gets the organ tones across.
Mm-hmm. And last time I saw you guys, I think you also were doing some like distorted wah. Like it sounded like basically like Jimi Hendrix guitar.
It all started with the wah. Because I had the wah from my electric guitar days. I was in a reggae band in high school.
Nice.
So that was the start. And if you have a wah, of course you need a tuner. And you also need a reverb.
Yeah.
You need a fuzz. Like, it just goes from there.
Yep.
So you have compensator box.
The compensator.
Yeah. But the trick is playing what an organ or playing what Jimmy would play.
Right.
If you're just playing classical riffs or like violin riffs, it sounds cheesy.
Yeah.
And that is the challenge, playing what sounds tone appropriate. So I'm still learning that.
Yeah. Well, luckily with the Dustbowl Revival, the music is so broad that you have the freedom to do that and to try new interesting sounds. The band is already made up of interesting instruments and it's hard to like classify the music, so you don't have to fit into a...
No, absolutely. That was sort of like from the very beginning. It was the genre itself was a conflict because it was basically the premise was a New Orleans brass group meets a bluegrass band and they fight it out. That was the sort of the thesis behind the start of it. And now we're so much more than those two. Like within the band, we have EDM interests, we have Brazilian music interests, jazz, classical, playwrights, and bluegrass is a small part of that from Daniel and I, and Zach as well. But beyond that, there's just so much influence. So when we take the time to rehearse and write music together, which is challenging because of that, it comes out much more unique.
Yeah.
And hopefully meets a wider demographic because of that.
Yeah.
Because of the diverse interests.
Yeah, I think so. I like how the last time I saw you guys, I think, was at McCabe's last year. And Zach said that the best way to describe the Dustbowl Revival was Jewish cowboy music.
Yeah. And
that's actually like pretty perfect, you know?
The joke is we have 3.5 cowboys on stage.
So what's Dustbowl up to? You guys were just out for a couple months, right? And
yeah, touring hard.
Yeah.
Summer's always crazy, as you know.
Yeah.
The longest we've done probably is 24 days in a row, but usually it spans from about 12 to 20 days.
Yeah.
I know you guys probably would go longer.
Get Down Boys?
Yeah.
Well,
back in the day.
We did fewer tours, but they were massive. So we only really did the whole cross country thing like 4 or 5 times. But when we did that, it was like 6 weeks, sometimes longer.
We're trying to figure out how to structure our business because we have so many dates.
You've only been a band for 10 years,
Yeah. We're trying to figure out how to structure our schedule because we have all these dates between 150 to 200 a year.
Yeah.
And so, we need to cut that down so we have more time at home to write. Because good gigs come from good music, but we don't have time to create. And when we get home, we're all burnt out. So, what do we do? So, do we spread fewer dates throughout the whole year? Do we just put it into one big chunk during the summer? That's sort of where we're at. Because we all know we want to tour a little bit less. And, it's scary. What if we mess up and we don't make enough money? Or...
Yeah, and there's also some of the attitude of you got to get it while it's good, you know.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're playing so many dates, not all the gigs are good or worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance thing. I think every artist and band has to do that because you guys tour. That's your bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
For touring acts, especially, but also for recording artists who are just putting up albums, you have to have that cycle where you write the thing, record the thing, take it out on the road, play it live, sell it, and then you got to start that cycle over again. And it's hard to do that if you're constantly out promoting and pushing and selling and playing.
And it's weird. They overlap. When you're still touring the last album, you have to be
writing
thinking forward.
Stuff. Yeah.
And plus, everybody's very creative. Zach is very creative when it comes to writing lyrics. As a band, it's hard to come together because we need a rehearsal space. We need to be in for that studio for a few days, at least in a row. So when we're on the road, it's not as creative. And we all have these creative needs that aren't being serviced necessarily by the band because we all have our own individual interests. So having time to address that, Liz wrote her own lullaby album, which is amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I bet.
Or when I was home, I took a vocal class, which I've always wanted to do.
Nice.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
So I guess it comes down to addressing, not putting all the pressure on the band for your creative interests. Put in the work for sure. But also understanding that it's okay to address your creativity in other areas. It's actually pretty healthy to do so.
It's very healthy because if you don't, you guys will all get sick of the band and then just go and do your separate things without, you know what I mean? It'll get to a breaking point, you know?
Yeah. So we're hoping by cutting down touring a little bit, we can create more as a group and be more creative individually as well.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's sort of where we're at. We're planning on recording February next year for a summer release next year.
Awesome. Yeah, Zach said the same thing because Zach was here on the podcast. I forget when that was, a few months ago.
Nice.
And he was kind of saying the same thing about how his writing is going in different directions. because of that need to explore outside of Dust Bowl, songwriting or the style. He wants to write different songs that are not written for a band. Maybe they're just duos or maybe they're the genre just doesn't fit with the band or something like that. And you got to do that. You have to do that.
So when a lot of times I'm listening to really low-key female country songwriters, and there's like not a ton of room for that in Dust Bowl per se, but I'm getting really into songwriters for sure.
Yeah.
Laurie McKenna. This girl, Caroline Spence, has this album, Spades and Roses. It's freaking phenomenal.
Cool. I've heard the name.
It's a really good album. Erin Ray, man, I've been obsessed with her album.
Really?
Erin Ray and the Meanwhiles, yeah.
Okay.
It's like
check out there.
Yeah, basically I made a point to get in touch with like what's going on in Nashville. It's like, oh, look, there's a lot of good music, surprise.
Yeah.
That I just don't hear about here necessarily.
Yeah, that market is crazy. I mean, there's a lot going on with that market, but there's a whole lot of talent, and it's not often who you see in the music video.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, like Laura McKenna, Kim McGraw covered her song Humble and Kind, I believe. And it's fine, but it was her album that I got obsessed with.
Right.
Because it's less...
Yeah. Chris
commercial.
Stapleton was like that for a long time. He was like the writer, just this incredible songwriter who all these country stars, I think Tim McGraw was one of them, would cover, would record his songs, and he was like the guy behind the scenes, and then actually made it out in widespread mainstream popularity. But John Hartford was always like that too. He never really got the popularity. He wrote all these songs that got recorded into gold records.
God,
but he himself never really had like a hit or anything. But
I mean, Glenn Campbell was sort of a saint for him, I guess.
Oh yeah, Gentle on My Mind. John Hartford would say that like paid for that he retired off of that song.
Man, but he's such a hero. Way beyond that.
Yes.
So I guess we're lucky that made it to the pop scene, so that more people could appreciate his huge body of work.
He does have kind of a cult following now, and I think especially in the bluegrass world, and young people just love John Hartford.
Absolutely.
I went through a major John Hartford phase. I still love John Hartford and his music, but there was a time when I was like trying to get my own solo act into a place like John Hartford, where he was playing banjo and guitar and fiddle.
And step dancing while he did it.
and flatfoot dancing, But yeah, what an entertainer.
There's a great album by Courtney Ann Hartman and Robert Ellis from Delamay and Milk Carton Kids, respectively. And they cover Gentle on My Mind. They also cover them Way Long Time Ago Times. And it's amazing hearing. They're both killer pickers. And I love both their voices.
Yeah.
That's also an album that I became pretty obsessed with.
Yeah.
It's called Dear John.
Support for this podcast comes from Zuri Food, all natural, all human grade dog food, offering 4 different diets to optimize nutrition for your pup. And now, 2 different kinds of dog treats as well. Visit www.zurifood.com today to order yours, because pups are people too.
What you been listening to besides Ray Charles?
Yeah. It's an awful lot of Ray Charles, but nothing wrong with that. What have I been listening to? I got to be honest. I don't listen to a lot of music these days. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Sure.
A lot of podcasts about books and different TV and pop culture stuff that I follow along with, as well as all of the podcasts in the Osiris network, which is the network that Guitarcast is on.
Right.
And if I have time in the car, or if I'm at work, that's kind of what I've been listening to. I had the music I've been playing recently has been a lot of Fish, because they're about to go on tour like in a couple of weeks, and I'm gonna see 5 shows by the end of the year. So
nice.
I'm getting into my
all over the country.
2 here in LA, and then 3 in Denver.
Oh, sick! Oh my god.
Yeah, so I'm kind of ramping
exciting.
up. I'm a big Fish is my favorite band, most influential band and guitar player for me, and I spent years listening to nothing but Fish and building my collection of live stuff, and it was like all I listened to for many, many years. And for the last, 5-10 years, I listened to Fish in seasons, and it kind of gives me a fresh take on it. So yeah, right now I'm in Fish season.
That's awesome. I hear you. I feel the same way about like my secret love for reggae.
Oh, dude!
Because like there are certain months where I'll just listen to similar albums every day. Like reggae got me through college for sure.
Me too, man. And reggae's got this.
Or long drives, man. I can always rely on it to get me going.
Reggae. I went through a huge reggae phase too in high school and college, and it's one of those styles that's like so. It's so frustrating because on one hand, it's like this stereotype. The
For
music
sure.
itself,
Yeah.
the people playing it, the people listening to it, are very much a stereotyped image, which
Yeah.
I hate.
Of course.
On the other hand, the music is so good and musical, and like the way that it's built, the way that one measure of reggae music is built, where you have the subdivisions. You've got the guitar skanking on 2 and 4.
Sure.
Then you have a keyboard bubbling in between those beats. So do that skank kind of thing. And the upbeats. And then you've got the drums, which are putting the snare down on the, yeah. And usually there's no snare drum on the one,
Right,
So
nothing
the
on the one.
is just like this open thing, and everybody comes back in on their subdivisions.
Love it,
right?
man. Yeah.
Which is the opposite of like say James
Same with
Brown.
the bass. The bass, one.
Right. A lot of those bass lines are sparse, and the notes are not on strong beats.
Nah.
They're like in these weird places,
Oh,
and
man.
it's so heady. It's such a thoughtful style.
It is, yeah.
But people write it off kind of like with bluegrass. They write it off as this
Absolutely.
cartoony,
Yeah,
hacky
absolutely.
thing, So I mean, like and with reggae, it's like the pinnacle stereotype band is Bob Marley and the Wailers, right?
Sure.
But again, they earn that. That's the best. That's the source. That's what you got to go to,
I quickly got really into Steel Pulse. And I kind of like them because
Maytals.
they're a little bit more low key, but their messages are so strong and
Yeah.
really biting too, about racism and its treatment of blacks and stuff. And so I've been listening to them. Okay, for a long time. They're still killing it. I saw them a month ago at the Fonda, and Mooney is just bouncing all over. Still an
Nice.
amazing performer. And I found a video of them performing a Prodigal Son from Handsworth Revolution, and this video was from 30 years ago at least, and I never realized how young they were when that record was cut. It blew my mind watching them singing that.
Yeah.
They're so young. I just saw Fishbone the other night at
I heard
MacArthur
about
Park.
that. Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Wow.
The moshes were so hard.
I heard an
know.
announcement on KCRW about
The line between skank circle and mosh pit is a fine one. It basically depends on the direction. If everybody's going in a clean circle, it's a
Clockwise.
skanking. If they go like gas molecules in a heated environment, it's a mosh pit. But man, it felt ritualistic with all the energy and just the dust, and it was definitely what we needed. They had a big fuck racism poster, or funk racism with the fishbone circle.
Cool.
It's crazy to listen to them. It's basically Ari, my wife, was something like, wow, they sound a lot like P-Funk. I was like, really? I was like, oh yeah, I guess they do. Just like 100 times faster, more punky, but still those weird vocals,
Yeah,
funky horn lines. I never
Yeah.
realized that until she brought it up.
I can see that. Well,
Yeah.
what do you say? Want to do some playing?
Yeah, I'll play some fiddle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long one.
Nice.
That's a fun one.
I got most of
Yeah.
those changes in there. I remember the last time I played that song.
Man, there's no getting around how tasteful Mark O'Connor's playing is.
Yeah.
Like, independent of his character or whatever. I don't know. People have different views. But like I've been playing all these gypsy jazz tunes for a long time. And I've never actually learned the solos that are on them, like, was it Pupville or dog tunes.
Yeah.
And
Pupville's a good one.
Yeah. And I finally took EMD. Oh man. Cedar Hill, Pigeon Roost, Albuquerque Turkey. So those are the ones that I played with Paul Statman and David Bullock.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad, Ron Vance, of Burning Heart Bluegrass.
Yeah.
So I finally
Great
took the
band.
time to transcribe these solos. I'm like, shit, there's some like really good stuff.
Yeah.
So just in doing this like a week or two ago, I pulled in so many more licks in my fingers from finally learning these.
Yeah. When I was at Berkeley, I spent a lot of time transcribing Tony Rice breaks, and like it's hard. It takes a long time. You got to hit pause and go back and pause But if you do that, man, at the end of when you're done, not only can you play the break, but your fingers have just learned all these new things that are available.
You understand it on such a deeper level after hearing it so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll get weird. He doesn't care about the beat.
Yeah, which is also can be hard.
Yeah, I found myself getting really confused with some of the O'Connor licks, realizing I had dropped a beat somewhere.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it all makes sense now.
What about Big Sayada?
Soda, that's a...
Right.
Classic.
Well, Connor, thanks for being on the show, man.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me over.
Always good to see you, and have fun with Dustbowl Revival. You guys leave like tomorrow, right?
We do. For PEI, Prince Edward Island.
That's right.
For the weekend.
Cool.
Then we're heading through, Seattle, Oregon, Philly, New York.
It's going to be hot.
All over. Yeah. 'Tis the season.
All right.
Cheers, man.
Thanks again for being here, man. Thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to follow GuitarCast on Twitter and Instagram at GuitarCastPod, and visit guitarcast.net for all previous episodes and live performances.
Osiris.